How to Build Confidence in Communication Skills by Rohn. The best communication occurs when both people are sincere, one sincerely wishing to learn or listen, and the other sincerely wishing to share. You need to have well-chosen words available in your bank of mental resources, along with enough emotion from your heart and soul, to make your communication work. A diet of words can feed the mind and inspire us to faith, vision, and articulation. That's how miracles can happen. Success is like an ocean, it's not in short supply. The problem is, some people go to the ocean with a teaspoon. Getting your message across. To be able to get along well with others, to be able to work well with others, to be able to live well with others, to enhance your rapport with others, you must be a good communicator. Let me give you some tips on good communication. The first is to have something worth saying. This comes from cultivating your interests, sensitivity, and knowledge. And second, now that you've got something worth saying, say it well. When expressing yourself, keep a few important concepts in mind. Number 1 is sincerity. The best communication occurs when both people are sincere, one person sincerely wishing to learn or listen, and the other person sincerely wishing to share his thoughts. The second tip for communication is practice. Part of what I teach in sales training emphasizes practice. Start with something simple. And when you don't know much about what you're doing, practice is even more important. Let's say you're in sales and your presentation is not that good. You wander around saying, "You wouldn't want to buy this, would you?" Maybe if you say that often enough during the day, somebody might say, "Well, maybe I would." What are you selling? You can't respond, mind your own business. No, once you open the door, you've got to go through it. Here's what happens if you practice your sales techniques, you're bound to make sales. Somebody will say, "What are you selling?" and you will tell them. Maybe they'll want to buy what you're selling. If you practice, you'll get better. You'll get better at your sales presentation. You'll get better at listening to your prospect. You'll get better at closing the sale. You'll get better at earning a living. Practice is just as valuable as the sale. Because here's what is valuable in sales: the skills you cultivate. The sale will make you a living. The skills will make you a fortune. Practice your presentation and your ability to communicate what you know. The people out there who say, "No, I wouldn't care for any," are just as valuable. Why? Because they took the time to let you practice your presentation. When you're just getting started, you might even want to pay them to listen to you. Practice while you stumble around. So be thankful for the no's. Practice helps you develop skills. Skills make your labor more valuable. If you just sell, you can make a living. If you sell skillfully, you can make a fortune. If you just talk, you can hold a family together. If you talk skillfully, you can build dreams and the future. The difference is the degree of skill you possess. You can cut a tree down with a hammer, but it takes about 30 days. If you trade the hammer for an axe, you can cut the tree down in about 30 minutes. The difference between the 30 minutes and 30 days is the tool. And your best communication tool is your skill, so practice effective communication. The next concept to consider is brevity. Sometimes you don't need too much. All you need is just enough. Here's what I found out: the more you know, the briefer you can be. You can learn to make words more effective. Jesus was brief when he was putting his team together. He just wandered around the countryside, and every once in a while he would see somebody he wanted on his team and say, "You follow me." That's short. That's brief. Why could Jesus be so brief yet be so effective? Here's what I think. He was effective because of all that he didn't have to say. When you become bigger, when you become wiser, when you become stronger, you become a person of better reputation. When you arrive, your reputation has preceded you. You don't have to say much. You don't have to launch into a 2-hour harangue if your reputation has preceded you. Your reputation will get a lot of the job done before you even arrive. If you become personally secure, and your reputation precedes you, sometimes you don't need that many words. And if you pay attention to those you're talking with, understand their personalities, watch their body language, you may realize that you need to be brief, or you'll lose them in the first minute. If you're talking to a prospective client, and you know he's a bottom-line kind of guy, be brief. Stick to the point. If he's in the mood to be overly conversant, then take that cue. If not, stick to the facts. I know a woman who lives in a suburban area. There are lots of kids selling stuff door to door. You should give kids a chance to practice their presentation. After all, this is probably their first experience in sales. So some of the time, this woman will listen to the kids. But other times, she butts right in with, "Water. You selling, who's it for, and how much do you want?" She ends up buying whatever the kid is selling. She just doesn't have time for the pitch. After years of this woman's daughter hearing this, the little girl is out selling Girl Scout cookies for the first time. Her second day out, the girl comes home, and her mom asks, "How did you do?" The girl says, "I sold 256 boxes so far." Mom says, "That's great. How'd you do it?" The girl says, "Well, I figured most of the moms are like you, and I knew I had about 2 seconds to say my stuff or they'd shut the door on me. So I just smiled, told them my name, said I was selling Girl Scout cookies, and asked them how many boxes they'd like." That bottom line approach can really work. But it may not always be the right one to use. That's why you've got to size up the situation. Read your audience. And read them well to know the best way to approach them. Body language tells a lot about which approach to take. Look at how the people you're talking to are sitting. What are they doing with their hands? Their eyes? If a man has his arms crossed, legs crossed, chin tucked down, and he is frowning, he's not going to be easy to reach. If a woman is standing up from behind her desk, you've got to hurry. She's not going to listen to much more. Pick up the pace and get down to it. Finally, you've got to learn to pick up emotional signals. Women just seem to have this part built in. Men can learn it. So learn to read body language and emotions. Learn to read what others are feeling so you can change the way you Communicate and get your message across. That's the way to communicate well. The next part of expressing yourself well is doing so with style. Be a student of a variety of styles, but make sure you develop your own. You can let someone else influence you, but don't become them. Develop your own style. Here's another tip on expressing yourself: develop your vocabulary. You've just got to have a good vocabulary to speak well. If you're lacking in vocabulary, then you're lacking in the tools to articulate some problem or idea. Words, you can't communicate without them. And you can't communicate well without an extensive vocabulary. Every time you come across a word that's new to you, look it up. Every time you're in a conversation and the other person uses a word that's new to you, look it up. Of course, most of the time you can figure out the meaning of a new word by how it's used. But if you can't, make sure you find out the definition before you use it. Several years ago, some of my friends took a survey among prisoners as part of a rehabilitation program. They weren't looking for this information, but here's what they found: there's definitely a relationship between vocabulary and behavior. The more limited the vocabulary, the more the tendency to exhibit poor behavior. When you stop and think about it for a moment, it makes sense. Vocabulary is a way of seeing. It gives us insight. You can't use tools you don't have to create. Understanding, awareness, comprehension, perception, or a vision for yourself. You can only have as much vision as your present vocabulary will give you. And if you're limited in vocabulary, you can't see very well. It's like seeing the world through a tiny little hole. Vocabulary is also a tool to express what's going on in your heart, what's going on in your head. It allows you to say what you see and perceive. If you have a limited way of translating and expressing what's going on in your mind, you will fall way behind. You would have twin problems without a good vocabulary. Number 1, you wouldn't be able to see. Number 2, you wouldn't be able to express your thoughts. Your world would keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller without the vision this tool provides. Finally, you wouldn't need a place much bigger than a jail cell to live. Why? That's about as big as some people think. That's all they've got, this little narrow world. But with every new word you learn, your world expands. You enhance your ability to perceive and express ideas, and your mind will know no limits. Intensifying your words. What is it that makes language powerful? I can give you a simple answer. Words filled with emotion. Words themselves are powerful, but not nearly as powerful as those loaded with human emotion. Hate, love, anger, contempt, caring, and compassion are all part of the full spectrum of human emotion, available to all of us. Emotion is what makes language powerful enough to accomplish a task, move somebody to action, correct a problem, or find a solution. We need the full range of emotion. In fact, things can get a little complicated. Because at times you've got to put love and hate in the same sentence. When you feel it, it's important to say it. Think about how often you have to say to your children, "I love you, but I hate what's going on." It's crucial for kids to know What you love and what you hate. I love you, but I hate where you're going. I love you, but I hate who you're around. It can be extremely difficult to explain both your love and your hate, but you've got to learn to do it. You've got to express it, you can't just ignore it. Here's where intensity plays its part. It changes the power of the word. Picture a word as a little straight pin. If I had a little straight pin, and I threw it at you and hit you on the hand, you'd feel it. I've touched you with my words. But what if I took that little straight pin and wired it to end of an iron bar? I could drive that pin through your heart. The pin is the word, and the iron bar is the emotion. Words backed up with emotions are so much more powerful. The emotion changes the effectiveness of the word. Keep in mind, however, that emotions must be well measured. That's what makes a good play, a good performance in a movie. When your emotions are well balanced, you don't overdo it when expressing a small point. That would look silly. All leaders have to be taught this. You don't need an atomic explosion to get a small point across. In leadership, we teach you not to shoot a cannon at a rabbit. It's too much firepower. It's effective, but you'll have no more rabbit. You also don't want to err on the side of expressing too little. If it's a major point and you don't have much emotion, your words will lose effectiveness. You won't look very good. It is a skill we can all learn and develop, knowing how much firepower to put into our words. Well-chosen words mixed with measured emotions are the most effective. You need to have well-chosen words available in your bank of mental resources, along with enough emotion from your heart and soul to make your communication work. Where does intensity come from? It comes from the blend of all of our experiences. Where you've been, what you've seen, what you've heard, how you felt, what you went through, what you got into, what you got out of, your successes and failures, that is your emotional intensity. You must have it available near the surface. For the presentation, for the play, for the conversation, this emotional stuff has got to be near the surface. Not too deep. Not too far away, but available, ready to be mixed in with the language. That's what makes an effective communicator. Expanding your perception. Words are almost godlike. If somebody can't see how he can possibly be successful, and you come along and tell him your story, choosing the best words you have done him an immense favor. When you finish, he says, "Before you got here, I was blind. Now I can see." Are words that powerful? Yes, words are that powerful. You've probably heard or used phrases like these at some point. Before you got here, I was in the dark. While you were talking, some things dawned on me. Once you explained that, the sun started coming up. Are words that powerful? Yes. A diet of motivational words can feed the mind and inspire us to faith, vision, and articulation. With words, we have perception. With words, we have the ability to contemplate ideas, think of solutions, and create dynamic situations in our own head. Although this power is almost beyond comprehension, I know it is there. An ancient prophet once said that words are like a lamp for your feet. They Provide a light for your pathway and help you see where you're headed. Words enable the mind to peer off into the future and see things others can't see. Nourish your mind with words. They are bread for the head. You need a slice of toast in the morning for your body, but do you remember to feed your mind? Words become food for thought. And when words are mixed with faith and inspiration, miracles can happen. That's how nations are formed. That's how companies are founded. That's how hospitals and schools are built. That's how humankind has developed a dynamic, civilized society. It all comes down to words. Communicating appropriately. Appropriate communication is a major key to success in the marketplace. When you meet a new group of people, you must watch and listen and be alert before you decide on the appropriate communication style. You might greet old friends with a slap on the back and a tasteless joke, but you certainly wouldn't greet a multi-million-dollar business opportunity that way. You must take a few moments to study the temperament of your audience. Listen to how they communicate with each other. Watch how they react to situations and comments. Study your audience, lest you engage in some behavior that will prove inappropriate and costly. Some people could make $150,000 a year, but they have to be satisfied with $50,000 because their behavior is costing them the additional income. They've got the skills, but their behavior is costing them too much. It keeps setting them back. Let's consider some of those things in the marketplace that might cost you more than you want to pay. Here's one: bad language. You've got to be careful with language in the marketplace. Some language is more appropriate for a smoky bar. So what should you do? Leave it in the bar. Otherwise, you'll have to pay the consequences. We must all be students of consequences. We need to be aware of things that cost us. And bad language in the marketplace is one of the most important ones to consider. If you cuss and tell dirty stories in the marketplace, who would find that amusing? Other people in the marketplace who cuss and tell dirty stories. You'll have no problem with these people. As a matter of fact, they'll probably enjoy having you around. But if you cuss and tell dirty stories to those who might be offended, they certainly won't want to have you around. It will cost you a lot. You've also got to be careful about using inside jargon in the outside world. Your industry's buzzwords are unique to your industry. Be careful not to use this terminology on the outside. For instance, people who speak computer language must learn to shift gears when they go out into the marketplace. We all need to watch our jargon and remember to shift gears from the inside lingo to the outside world. Here's another costly communication error: expressing your emotion inappropriately. We must learn to deliver criticism and express our anger in a safe way. During the course of working with others, it's inevitable that you'll come across some situation that will result in anger. Or you'll find that criticism needs to be expressed. When you delegate responsibility, if there is either a lack of good communication or a lack of good listening on the other end, it's inevitable that the situation will get you all hot and bothered. What do you do with your anger? You can't lash out at your children, your friends, or your colleagues. But here's what you can and must do: lash out at the problem or the situation. Honey, you say to your teenager, "You know I love you, but what you did was wrong. I hate it that you took the car without asking first. And I especially hate it that you got a speeding ticket. What were you thinking?" Whatever the punishment might be, make sure you're addressing the bad deed, not the person. Let's say your assistant has sent the contract to the seller instead of the buyer. Make sure your assistant knows that you appreciate him, but you don't appreciate the wrongdoing. Whatever criticism you hand down, whatever anger you're expressing, make sure that the one receiving it knows full well that you care about him but hate what he did. If you're too steamed up to be this rational about it, make sure you keep your mouth closed until you've cooled off a bit. In his book The Leader in You, Dale Carnegie describes the attributes of kind criticism using the 3-for-1 rule. He explains, if you don't like something about the way someone works, write down the problem. But before you confront that person with criticism, discover 3 good things about the person. Noticing 3 good things gives you the right to criticize 1 bad thing. That's an interesting approach. Criticism after appreciation. With well-chosen and well-delivered words, you can admonish the doing without admonishing the doer. This is important. You love the person. You hate the act. Make sure he or she knows the difference. You don't have to couch the words. You don't have to hide your anger or disappointment, but you do have to make sure that your communication is effective so the wrongdoing will never be done again. The more you care, the stronger you can be. It's simply a matter of communicating appropriately. An exercise in sensitivity training. To really communicate well and touch a wide range of people, you must be able to relate to a wide range of experiences. They've got to be part of you. Being touched by a wide range of human experience is an exercise in sensitivity training. To really be able to reach people and teach them with words and ideas and emotion, we've got to enter this area of sensitivity. Sensitivity involves being touched, being affected by the things that happen in our own lives as well as those of other people. This is part of the heavyweight stuff that has a strong impact on our language and communication. I've always lived a rather sheltered life, so I've had to really work on this. What do I know about tragedy? I've never had any tragedy. But part of life is tragic, and if you don't at least try to understand this extremely sorrowful side, your life is left a bit shallow. When you live such a sheltered life, you just have to try to go outside of your own small world and allow yourself to be touched by someone else's experience. You can't really know what anyone else's life is like until you live it, but at least you can try to understand. And if you do your homework in this area of sensitivity, you'll gain the kind of depth that enhances your conversation and your communication. When I lived in Northern California, I used to go to San Francisco 2 or 3 times a year and spend a day in the Tenderloin. For a farm boy from Idaho, that Tenderloin was quite an experience. I got to see what I call the other side. I walked the streets where the lonely people walk and ate where they ate. After listening to some of their stories, I came away with a whole new sense of the great distance between failure and success, goodness and evil, despair and joy. I also came away with a greater sense of value, because the true blessings of life are illuminated by the contrasts. It's hard to genuinely appreciate winning until you've done some losing. It's hard to appreciate succeeding until you've done some failing. And once you've done some failing, success takes on even more worth and value. During one of my visits to the Tenderloin, I met a bartender named Frank. Frank sees more tragedy in a week than most people see in a lifetime. One day, Frank and I were talking, and he pointed out a lady sitting on a bar stool. He asked me, "How old do you think she is?" I answered, "She's 45. Frank shook his head. "No, she's 25. Her name is Cookie. She used to be a dancer back in the go-go days, but then she developed some kind of bone disease in her legs and her hips. She's had all kinds of operations with bolts and pins trying to hold her together. Now she's crippled and she can hardly walk, so her go-go days are over." Sure enough, Cookie seemed very crippled. Frank continued, "Cookie also has a little boy who's 5 years old and dying of leukemia. So she comes here several times a week, sits on that bar stool, and plays a little music to try to cheer herself up. She usually drinks far too much. I have to call a taxi to come and take her home." Cookie's story made me think. Why did her life work out like that while my life worked out like it has? Why do I get to travel around the world while Cookie finds it hard to even get home? That kind of exposure, that kind of sensitivity, that kind of study can really open your eyes. Try to let those experiences touch you. Let them affect you, let them educate you, let them give you a broader range of emotional wealth and worth. Those extra observations will start showing up in the way you express yourself verbally, and you'll be able to touch people that you couldn't touch before. You'll be able to reach people you couldn't reach before. Your words will have more drawing power than ever before once you witness some of these experiences. Ask yourself, what could I do and what experiences could I engage in that would give me a broader understanding of human suffering as well as human joy? How can I become more sensitive to the problems in life as well as the triumphs, the sorrows as well as the joys, the failures as well as the successes? By answering those questions and then following through on the answers, you will greatly enhance your ability to touch somebody else. Developing your networking skills. Now that we've discussed the basics of communication skills, let's move on to see how you can use these skills to create more business. The key is networking. Working within a group of people that you know or want to know. I highly recommend 6 techniques for effective networking. Number 1, when developing relationships through networking, remember that they must be mutually beneficial. The favor you do for someone else is expected to be returned someday. For each contact you give someone else, you expect one in return. For each tip you give out, you expect one back. But remember the law of sowing and reaping. What you sow will come back to you multiplied. In a good networking relationship, you will receive more than one contact and more than one tip for each one you give out. If you find that you are giving out much more than you are receiving, it may be time to look for a new network. Number 2, keep the relationship active. Schedule quarterly lunches. Plan 2. Meet at Chamber of Commerce networking events. If you see a story about your contact in the newspaper, clip it out and send it to her with a note of congratulations. Send articles that may be relevant to his career. Keep in touch. Don't just call when you need something, keep in regular contact. Number 3. Express your gratitude and appreciation. Make it clear that you're appreciative of the contact or tip that was sent your way. Send a finder's fee if your latest deal was the result of your contact. Send a special gift if a tip panned out. A man I know got a stock tip, in passing, from an acquaintance of his. The stock made this man thousands of dollars richer. What did he do? He sent a bottle of Dom Perignon in 2 very expensive, gold-rimmed, crystal glasses and a thank you note. He didn't have to do that, but the recipient will never forget this. Guy. Don't forget to express your gratitude and appreciation. Number 4. Keep your professional relationships professional. If it looks like jealousy is rearing its ugly head, firmly but politely cut it off. When the relationship no longer serves you, is no longer mutually beneficial, step away from it. If the relationship you're building through networking appears to be harmful, take a sword to it. Number 5. Remember the other person's need for achievement. This is an important tip to keep in mind, especially when you're dealing with someone who's not as advanced in their career as you are. By respecting this need, by providing guidance and leadership, by sharing some of your personal experiences with others, they'll end up bringing opportunities to you. Why? They value your insight. They value your experience. And most of all, they value the time and the knowledge you shared with them. Acknowledge those who are on their way up. You may just find out one day that it was your extra effort that gave them the boost they needed. Number 6. Remember that competition is good. Competition is healthy. Competition, when used positively, can be a benchmark by which you measure your productivity. And competition to reach a goal is far more noble than competition to beat out an associate. With good networking skills, a friendly competition between 2 associates can build character. Take, for instance, the 2 opposing attorneys in a courtroom. If you've only seen their courtroom antics, you would think they were fierce competitors. But step outside the courtroom and you'll probably find that they're discussing their next tennis match together. With your communication skills in place, you'll increase your ability to work well with others. Listen, talk, share, sympathize, empathize. By extending your reach to work well with people that you know, you'll be able to extend your reach to work well with those you don't know. You'll be able to develop networking skills. And once you do, you'll find that networking is an incredible way to increase your opportunities, tip by tip, contact by contact. Strengthening your mental muscle. Debate is a highly refined form of communication. One of the best reasons to engage in debate is to exercise the mind. Through debate, you can not only refine your ideas, but you can also develop your mental muscle. If there is ever a time we need mental muscle, it's now, as we move into the new millennium. Ideologies are going to be coming at us from all directions. Some of them will work in concert to help build a good world, and some are going to be in conflict. But whether ideas are in concert or in conflict, you've got to have the necessary mental muscle to be able to understand different ideologies, sort them out, and state your opinion clearly. We could get into the great debate of whether there would be positive without negative. Here's my best answer: it doesn't seem like it. Would there be good without evil? I don't think so. Would there be life without death? Probably not. It seems to require both to make a scenario. Would there be health without illness? It doesn't seem like it. Would there be light without darkness? No, I don't think so. Would there be winning without losing? How could there be? It wouldn't make sense. You couldn't win if nobody lost. Somebody asked me once about my definition of life. I said that life is the struggle to keep death at a respectable distance. Death seems to want to move in prematurely, and you've got to push it back to live as long as you possibly can. Why? Because illness is out to push your health into a small corner. You've got to make sure that your health regimens are out to push your illnesses into a small corner. Somebody's going to push somebody. Here's the best way I can describe the human experience: there are opposites in conflict, and we're caught in the middle. In the midst of those opposites vying for territory is the glorious possibility of human experience. That is what makes the scenario. We must learn to embrace both the positive and the negative through the art of debate. We've got to drink from both cups. You don't know what you're missing if you're acknowledging less than the full range of human experience, the whole drama with all of its clashes and conflicts. What if you were listening to a symphony orchestra, and it only played little happy high notes all evening? How much of that could you take? No one would stay. Don't you also want to hear the startling crash of the cymbals, the somber music that drags you down into the tragedy of life? Of course. Play me the whole orchestra. Don't leave any of it out. Most of the music of the world is written in the minor key, the key of pathos, sadness, mystery, and wonder. You can't shrug that off. You've got to experience it. Otherwise, there is no scenario. There is no life. We need the negative to alarm us. Imagine you're driving down a country road. Up ahead, the bridge is out, but there are no signs to warn you. Somebody who's already been down the road has had a colossal wreck. He is limping back up the road as you're speeding along. He flags you down, and he advises you not to go down this road any further because the bridge is out. Would it be wise to say, "I'm not into that negative stuff. Mind your own business, and head on down the road"? No. Once you've taken a look at this guy, and it appears that he's been in a wreck, the wise response would be, "Hey, I'd better take it easy. I'd better not go down this road. Somebody's been down this road, and he had a disaster. I'm going to take his advice and change my direction." That's what I'm asking you to do: evaluate. We need the full menu of ideas on the negative side as well as on the positive side. we need to learn about both good and evil. We need to understand the heights as well as the depths. That way, we will not be tempted to follow the evil road, although it may taste good. In the beginning. Power sometimes does taste good in the beginning, but the ancient prophet said that sometimes what tastes good in the mouth turns bitter in the belly. We need to seek a well-balanced input of both the negative and the positive. If your mind is searching through the full range of ideas, trying to come up with what you think is right, everyone will benefit. You've got to be healthy-minded. And debate is one of the ways to get there. Asking and receiving. Let me give you a biblical philosophy that teaches you how to get whatever you want. Ask. Of all the important skills to learn in life, be sure to include the skill of asking. You may be a good worker, a sincere, hard worker, but you've got to do better. Then work hard and be sincere all your life. You will wind up broke and embarrassed. You've also got to be a good asker. Let me give you some key points regarding the power of asking. First, asking starts the receiving process. In fact, the complete formula for asking is staggering. It says, ask and you will receive. Asking is like pushing a button to start your mental and emotional machinery. I don't know how it works, but I do know it does work. Asking is the beginning of receiving. Second, receiving is not the problem. You don't have to work on receiving. It's automatic. If receiving is not the problem, then what is? It's failing to ask. The man says, I see it now. I got up every day this year and worked hard, but nowhere in my house is there a list of what I want from my life. Can't you see? He is a good worker, but a poor asker.
Third, receiving is like the ocean, there's plenty to go around, especially in this country. It's like an ocean here. Success is not in short supply. The problem is, some people go to the ocean with a teaspoon. What I suggest you do, in view of the size of the ocean, is trade your teaspoon for at least a bucket. You will look better when you approach the ocean with a bucket. Kids won't make fun of you. Here's something else to remember about asking. There are two ways to ask. One is to ask with intelligence. Don't mumble. You won't get anything by mumbling. Be clear, be specific. Intelligent asking answers questions like this: how high? How long? How much? When? What size? What model? What color? Describe what you want. Define it. Remember, well-defined goals are like magnets. The better you define them, the stronger they pull. You need to know the answers of two very important questions. What do I want? That's the object. What for? That's your purpose. Purpose is stronger than object. What you want is powerful, but what you want it for is more powerful. Finally, ask with faith. When it comes to asking with faith, children are the masters. They firmly believe that they can get what they want simply by asking. That's what you need to do. By becoming childlike, you can get everything you want and more. That's the power of skillful asking. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe for more videos like this.